If you guys are all familiar with this types of stories that I do, especially stories regarding this subject, it seems like nothing has changed. Let's get into it. Good evening, demons and demonesses. Kwame Wahkan here. Got a new story that I wanted to read for you guys. I had actually prepared this video about almost a week and a half ago, but like I said, never had the chance to record it. But either way, it's something that has to be talked about. Now, majority of the people that, listen to my show and, watch it, do so through TikTok. TikTok is where I've seen the majority of my success from. Although I have been getting kind of a little bit of traction on YouTube, but TikTok seems to be where it's at. Now, this story is about another TikToker by the name of Girlalala. I think she resides in Florida, and unfortunately, she has just been murdered. I have an article for you guys. Let's read for it. Transgender TikTok influencer shot and killed in Florida after fight with boyfriend, officials say. Girlalala and her boyfriend of 3 years, Shanoyd Whyte Jr, 25, were engaged in a verbal argument Friday that turned physical while inside Whyte's vehicle, authorities said. Girlalala was then shot while she was sitting in the car, according to the release. Whyte told deputies that the couple argued frequently and that the argument had begun because Girlalala pulled his hair, the arrest documents say. He said he then pulled out his firearm but declined to provide further details, the documents say. After Girlalala was shot, Whyte called 911, the arrest records say. Whyte was arrested on the spot and charged with first-degree murder with a firearm, authorities said. A firearm was collected at the scene. It is unclear whether Whyte has an attorney. Now, this article only showed the face of Girlalala, but, like we always notice with the media, they never want to show the face of the person that actually committed this crime. So if you notice a pattern that's going on here, once again, the news article didn't show the suspect's face or mugshot, but I was able to obtain one. So here it is. I'm going to show you guys in full color, no filter, no black and white, nothing. This is Shanoyd Whyte's mugshot. Every single time, it's the same bloody thing. The same type of people that are doing this crap. The same exact demographic. Now I'm going to show you guys a news clip. This goes into a little bit more detail about the situation that, unfortunately, Girlalala was in. And it's pretty dark. So, take a look at it.
Well, we're learning new details tonight about the moments leading up to the death of Maurice Harrison. Better known online as Girlalala, a transgender influencer with thousands of followers.
Newly released documents outline what investigators say happened right before she was shot in Lauderdale Lakes. NBC6 reporter Lena Salzbank has the latest for us tonight. Lena.
Well, deputies say that call for help first came when a man waved them down along this street. They later identified that man as Girlalala's longtime boyfriend. New arrest documents painting a clearer picture of what deputies say they found when they arrived in Lauderdale Lakes Friday night. According to investigators, Whyte Jr. flagged down deputies outside of a home on Northwest 37th Street, led them to his beige Chevy Malibu. Inside, detectives say they found Girlalala shot multiple times with blood soaking through the seat and pooling onto the floor. Documents that Whyte told detectives he and Girlalala got into frequent arguments, including several earlier that same day. He claimed one of their final fights began when the victim pulled his hair, but he refused to explain what exactly happened with the gun that was found inside of the car. Exclusive surveillance video from a neighbor's Tesla appears to show some of those final moments. In the footage, you could see what looks like Whyte Jr. stepping out of a car holding what appears to be a gun, and Girlalala leaning out of the front passenger seat. You could then see Jr. walking over and placing Girlalala back inside the vehicle. Detectives say he'd called 911, and you can see him pacing near the car. Since the news, fans have been reacting to social media, some even pointing to old videos that hint to signs of an abusive relationship. The victim's family asking for prayers and time to heal. And tonight, the suspect remains behind bars, facing several charges, including first-degree murder with a firearm. For now, reporting live, Lena Salzbank. And
now, if you heard from the clip, both the reporters and also many social media users have noticed that Girlalala had been, physically abused. There were signs of a clearly abusive relationship. I don't know her situation because, to be quite honest with you, I've never interacted with her on TikTok. But from what I do know, and from, friends of friends and other people I know that were in similar situations, this must have been a very scary place for Girlalala to have been. I've known many people in the LGBTQ community that have been in abusive relationships. Some were able to escape and some unfortunately were not. Matter of fact, this kind of brings back to a case that I had reported on many years ago that happened to a friend of mine out in Philly. Pretty much how it started was you had this one man that was exposed for, dating a trans woman, and he eventually had, taken his own. I'm gonna let you guys fill in the blank there. Now, everyone was focusing on what this lad did to himself, but the full story actually had gotten a lot darker. Apparently, this lad was suffering from lots of, mental health issues, and he was also highly addicted to narcotics. I don't want to get too much into detail about the exact substances that this lad was using because, don't want to get banned, But apparently, not only was he planning on doing that to himself, but he was also planning on doing that to his trans partner. And thankfully, she survived and was able to get out of that situation. And judging from the way that Shanoyd Whyte has been behaving, it's clearly obvious that he probably was in the same boat. This is a scary time that we're all living in right now. Between, the government and politicians trying to legislate our community out of existence and, things like this, and that's the sad thing, is that the last person you would expect this type of behavior from would be, a partner. And I know people are going to be really mad about what I'm about to say next, and believe me, it is pretty controversial, but it has to be said. Cis men are just fucking dangerous. I know people are going to say, oh, that's too broad, you're overgeneralizing, Kwame. Well, no, we all see the patterns. With all of these stories, every single trans person that I've reported on that has had their life taken from them was taken from them by a cis man. Now, in this case, it's a cis black man. And like all the other patterns, he used a firearm. Now, some people might say, we should use gun control, which may or may not be true. And, I'm a strong supporter of gun control as it is. And, I also believe that, if you are in an abusive relationship or if your partner is abusive, then they should have their firearms taken away. But that's one of the least controversial things that I have to say. The second thing I want to say is perhaps it's time that we as a community should just stop dating cis men, because we're noticing this happens all the time, over and over and over again. Cis men will lie. They'll tell you, they'll say one thing, say, oh, baby, I love you, I'm going to treat you right. And then they do shit like this. And now we have another woman, a young woman murdered because not only could he not control himself, but he thought that he can control the life of his partner. This is wrong. This is wrong on so many levels. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why, T for T and, T for N and N for N are becoming so popular nowadays, because people are realizing and they're waking up and saying, hey, you know what? These people are disrespecting us. I might as well date a partner that's actually going to respect me and treat me right. And I'm not the only one that notices it. A lot of cis women themselves are noticing this pattern. A lot of men, they're sitting around in front of the computer or on their phone and they're watching all this red pill content. They get in the car and they listen to Matt Walsh and Fresh and Fit and the whatever podcast and all these other donut heads that want to talk all this shit. And when I say cis women, I mean literally all cis women, even those that tend to align themselves with the political right. They're like, oh, well, these right-wing men, they're really dangerous, they're really abusive, they're really controlling. They want to dictate every aspect of my life, and I simply don't want that. And with how toxic this whole manosphere content is, and how these cis men that are clearly, misguided and have no direction in where they're going in life, they look at these guys and are like, hey, maybe I should take advice from him, not knowing that these are all just con men, filling their heads up with garbage, and in the end, they're left with absolutely nothing. Now, I don't know if Shanoyd Whyte was one of those guys that listened to those red pill content, but we've noticing it's a trend with a lot of these abusive partners. A lot of people that watch this red pill content tend to be very abusive towards, the women in their lives. Whether it be their mothers, their sisters, their nieces, daughters, even partners. My thing is this, if you can't respect your partner, maybe it's time that, need to speak to somebody. Maybe you need to see a doctor. Maybe you need therapy because this shouldn't happen. Whoever you're getting your advice from, whatever podcast or goofy YouTuber that you're listening to, perhaps it's about time you leave them to the wayside, become your own person, and start learning to think for yourselves. Because if you let other people think for you, this is the situation that you're going to be stuck in. That's pretty much all I have to say about this. To Girlalala, rest in peace, and to her family, I send my condolences. A life lost entirely too soon, and a void definitely will be felt within this community down in Florida. Alright, you guys, stay safe, stay metal, hail Satan, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.